Good evening, everybody. Good evening, everybody. Thank you all for coming out tonight to this community meeting. It's our first opportunity to have a conversation about a possible expansion of a growth area.
We cannot hear you.
Okay. Yeah.
Might have to just.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm sorry.
We don't have the best audio, and I have a soft voice, so. Is that any better?
Hold on. Keep going. Let me mess with
How's that?
it. Try.
Okay.
Keep going.
So like I said, the purpose of us being here tonight is to have a conversation about the potential expansion of one of our PERT areas in the Carmel Church growth area. But before we get started, I'm going to do a brief explanation of the comp plan and the zoning ordinance so we have a clear understanding of the legal mechanisms that are in place for land use in Virginia. So every jurisdiction in Virginia is required to have a comp plan that would dictate the physical development within the jurisdiction. The comp plan is meant to be general in nature. It is not typically parcel specific, and it is developed for the purpose of accomplishing coordinated and harmonious development within the territory that it is to cover. It is designed to promote the best future uses of resources, the health, safety, and welfare of the community. It identifies the long-term recommendations of a community and the territory, and it also identifies and sets the precedent for future land use in the county. So what future development may occur. A lot of times, older comp plans were developed with existing uses in places, and so when you see in our comp plan, some places I can think on Route 1, there may have been historically an industrial use there, and that use or that land area got identified for industrial development. And also when zoning came along in 1971, they also established that industrial zoning on those properties. So hence, if you look at in our comp plan and in our zoning map, you'll see odd zone parcels, say along Route 1, you might see a particular stretch of highway that's zoned RP, which is rural preservation, and then all of a sudden you see an industrial piece that has been there for years. And so that is just a result of the traditional use got labeled with that future land use designation, and then also when the zoning was instituted, they, in many instances, asked for that industrial zoning, and that was granted. So that's why sometimes you see those anomalies like that. So the comp plan is a living document. It is intended to be amended as communities develop and change. The Code of Virginia requires that it be updated every 5 years. And so you can do that in increments, or you can do complete updates every 5 years, but jurisdictions must at least address an update every 5 years. So in Carolina, there were some milestones relative to the comp plan. Carolina adopted its first plan in 77. There was a first update in 87. In 95, there were significant revisions. In 98, there were area plans were first developed. And then in 2004, there was the establishment of the 5 areas that we currently have. In 2010, the urban development area was developed, which is essentially what is Carmel Church Station on Route 1, essentially from the intersection of Route 207 and Route 1 south down to the Carolina-Hanover boundary. On the east side of Route 1 is essentially Carmel Church Station development. That area is identified as a UDA in that urban development area in Carolina. And then at the end of last year, Carolina adopted PERT areas, Planned Innovation and Research Technology areas, a land use designation, and then as well as a zoning ordinance classification. So Zoning is the legislative power granted by the General Assembly to the governing body to dictate land use in local jurisdictions. So Virginia is a Dillon Rule state, and for those of you who don't know, the Dillon Rule essentially means jurisdictions don't have any more power than is granted to them by the General Assembly. So jurisdictions do not have the ability to say, we're going to create a tax for purple houses without going to the General Assembly and saying, hey, can we have the ability to grant a tax on purple houses? So that is essentially what a Dillon Rule state is. The zoning ordinance, the importance of the zoning ordinance is it is the tool that helps or that implements the physical development and vision of the comp plan. So the comprehensive plan is essentially the guide and the vision that the community develops of what it wants to be over that planning horizon. And then the zoning ordinance is a tool to help implement that vision. So it is the regulation that dictates the physical development within a jurisdiction. So what is a planned industrial research and technology area? As you all, I'm sure, have heard, there's been a lot of interest in this region for technology uses, data centers, moving out of Northern Virginia down into Central Virginia. And recognizing that, Caroline County established two growth areas, one up on 606 and then one here, kind of where we sit now in the Carmel Church area, and identified land within those two areas that would be appropriate for data center development or research or technology industries that would be appropriate near those uses. Yes, ma'am.
Can you give us the name of 606?
Stonewall Jackson.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, like I said, in addition to the future land use designations, Caroline also adopted the zoning ordinance, and the zoning ordinance for PERC establishes the development criteria for data centers or any other use, excuse me, or any other use that would ask for that zoning classification. So it establishes setbacks, height requirements, landscaping requirements, requirements for environmental studies if there are impacts to the environment on a particular parcel. So this is the current future land use map, and the two PERT growth areas that I'm speaking of are the two areas outlined in red. And for those of you all sitting in the back, there are TVs on both sides. So if you can't see this one, you might be able to see one of those in the back a little bit easier. So I just wanted to put that out for you. But the Matamede area, which is the one up on 606, next to the Spotsylvania County line there, and then here, the one in Carmel Church, outlined in red also. So this map identifies essentially the Carmel Church growth area. When I talked about the comprehensive plan establishing growth areas, one of the growth areas that was established was the Carmel Church growth area. And so that entire area in black here, the changes colors here, that is the current boundary of the Carmel Church growth area. The red on this map is the area that I was speaking of a few seconds ago on the future land use map. That is the PERT area within the Carmel Church growth area. That is how it exists today in that red area.
Explain what PERT means.
So PERT stands for Planned Innovation, Research, and Technology.
Is it innovation or industrial? Previous two slides called industrial.
It's innovation. Thank you.
And that was the original name of the
Thank you. Appreciate it. So the red is the original area as it stands today. The blue lines here and here are areas for potential expansion. So we'll start with the blue line on the left side. The blue line on the left side essentially extends the red line or the boundary out to Route 207. The reason it's extended in the original red line, it bisects some parcels that extend to 207. And so you'd have a portion of a parcel in the PERT area, and you'd have a portion of the parcel outside of the PERT area in this, along 207 here.
And that black road, where that blue line was started, where from there to see where you can, what road is that? What's that road name?
That's Dry Bridge, I believe.
That bridge, okay, we're all in 207.
Mm-hmm.
Where it was started.
Well, we say where it starts.
Yeah, you say that, blue line right here, or here. Right here, what's where road is it? That's 207. That's 207. And what does it stop at?
That's 207. That is driving. It's going to extend down. It's not going to go to drive. It's not going to extend this way. It extend down south along the parcel. That's not a road. That's a parcel.
Okay, and they're gonna run to what road, they're gonna run to,
It runs down to the creek. It doesn't run to a road. That's a creek there. So it runs along parcel boundaries.
Hang on, can you guys let me finish and then we'll, yeah.
It's about this. Do you have something that moves them a little bit more?
Yes.
Someone just on the road, you have to really take the road and put it there?
Yeah, we'll have some additional maps that may clarify for you. Thank you. So I wanted to show this map because I had some comments from some citizens that the map that went out in the letter was a little difficult to read and didn't necessarily allow you to understand where we were talking about. So I wanted to show this map to give you some context into where exactly we're talking about. So this is a bit zoomed in here. So as you were just asking,
This is Dry Bridge Road right here.
where it goes, and then it extends up north. The yellow line here,
This line here. Railroad.
no, that yellow line is the power line. The railroad track is over here.
So the line cannot be divided. You said that there's piece of property on the blue area and on the red area. I believe that portion, we cannot have that because we got the railroad.
Well, it crosses the railroad. The line is an imaginary line, but it crosses the railroad. There wouldn't be any development. Yeah. Yeah, it does cross on parcel boundaries there.
They just arranged, what happened here? They just arranged.
Where?
On the left.
So there's nothing, at this point, this area has just been identified for potential technology uses, data centers or other uses.
In other words, the red has been approved, the blue is under discussion.
That is correct. That is correct. The red,
Is where MCD.
MCD is within the red area, yes ma'am. MCD is, yes, like the lady said, the red is approved, the blue is potentially proposed. For clarification. So,
Is there a reason that the blue is almost entirely outside the predetermined black line down Carmel Creek growth area instead of inside the growth area?
yes, there is. So the reason we are looking at the expansion is because since this red area was adopted, there's been significant interest from companies looking at this area for data center development. And so the red. And so, I'll get to that. So the reason we were looking at adding the blue is because we want to be ahead of the curve in terms of having land available. Excuse me, sir. We want to get ahead of the curve for development because there's a lead time to doing development. Understand that the land use designation does not change the zoning on the parcels. So just because you have a designation of PERT, the underlying zoning still remains the same. So if someone comes in and purchases a piece of property within, let's say right now, the red area, and they wanted to do a data center, they would still have to rezone that land to PERT, unless it is already zoned industrial. The PERT use or data center use is an allowed use in the M1 district. So, but they have to follow the standards of the PERT ordinance. So essentially, if you have M1 zone property today and you're within that area, you could do a data center development and you would still have to follow the standards that are in the PERT ordinance. So this is an aerial photograph to kind of give you an idea of what the area looks like. One of the reasons that this area was first identified for PERT land use designation is because it's not very densely populated. And so we wanted to, if they were going to have these uses in the county, you would want them to be in areas where they'd be the least amount of impact on the citizens as possible. So I'm sure all of you have heard of all the issues that they're having in Northern Virginia with data centers and the impact on noise and people not being happy. Well, essentially what happened in Northern Virginia, they kind of piecemealed the development of the data centers. They kind of popped in wherever they could go, and people built data centers. Well, two things happened. One, they were close to residential development, and then residential development moved in, and so you have a lot of citizens complaining about noise and everything else. Yes, ma'am.
So one of my questions that I have for you, how can we make sure that we don't end up like Princeton County? I chose to buy my first house in Carolina because it's beautiful, it's quiet, nice and country, and I can get chickens if I want to, have horses if I want to. I don't want it to be like Manassas, Gainesville, Haymarket, that's completely overrun with people, with buildings, with cars, with traffic. It's disgusting. Now, one thing I know when I'm on my way down to Walmart and I'm on my way down, I see signs, keep Carolina beautiful. How is this keeping Carolina beautiful?
So the reason that we're doing this is so we don't end up like the places you just described, because these areas are rural now. What's happening in the industry is that rather than buy individual parcels and set up individual data centers, the industry is now looking at doing campus-style data center facilities. So they are buying they're assembling multiple acreages, large acreages, and they are building campuses. So when I say a campus,
They're looking for the green from the map that's close to 95 and they're going there. It's very concerning.
so well, let me say this: Carolina is blessed and cursed by its geography. Okay, the fact is we do live on the 95 corridor. The fact is the cable and the internet, the fiber that runs to Europe and the rest of the world runs down the 95 corridor towards Virginia Beach. And so those are two things that we cannot change. What we can control here is where we want these uses to be. And so rather than have them come in and buy individual parcels, we have identified areas where we want to direct this development to so that we reserve the rest of the area to remain rural. That is why the county established a growth boundary. That's why you see the Carmel Church growth boundary.
You give it in people.
I'm sorry?
You give it in people, they come out. You give them a little bit more and more and more.
Well, I will say this. One of the things that as citizens you all should be proud of is that Carolina has done a really good job of following its comp plan. The comp plan was adopted in 2006. The last major amendment was in 2006. And if you look at the development patterns that are occurring, it is in accordance with the comp plan. So, like I said, it's a living document. So what is happening now is, in a reaction or try to address the changing industries, we are looking at areas to have development occur to limit its impact. Yes, ma'am.
So one of the things you just said was it as a comp plan, that these companies come in and they're going to build houses, they're going to do, not to build a data center. what I understood.
Campuses.
No, campuses, not housing. When I speak of campuses, I mean data center campuses where you have multiple data centers, as many as 10 to 15 data centers for in a specific area.
Well, because that's not the same reason.
People are trying to ask questions. Let's be respectful.
So a couple questions come to my mind. That's going to bring more people to the county. Okay. We currently have one of the lowest school systems, and you and I talked about this in the state. Period. So how is this going to improve that? Because I don't think it is. Because most of these people get tax breaks to the point where they don't pay taxes. We're going to have to build more schools. The roads aren't ready to support this. The water, all of that is a bigger picture than a blue line on a piece of paper.
And I don't disagree with anything you said, and at all. The benefit of this type of industry is, one, they are high tax revenue generators, and they are low traffic generators. So, like I just said, if you look at the development pattern that's occurring right now where we sit, there's a 1 million square foot warehouse right up the street on Ruther Glen Road. It generates trucks. There are warehouses just up the street from here that generate trucks. So data center uses generate probably 16 times the tax revenue per square foot than a warehouse. So if you take that amount of revenue without the truck traffic, then I think we're much better off. The increase in
But are
revenue.
they going to get tax breaks? That's my question. Because most companies get tax breaks. Most of the big industry gets tax breaks and don't end up paying.
Well, they will pay some taxes. The county is not in the business of giving away its resources for nothing. Yes, sir.
The tax rate for data centers is about 25 to 100%, while everyone else pays 3%.
Yes, but that tax rate was agreed. That is a regional tax rate that was agreed upon amongst the region. No, they do not. They charge $1.25 was an agreed upon tax rate in this region so that everyone would not be competing and cannibalizing each other. So
The citizens don't get any break. We feel the higher
sure.
environmental, everything. And the red TI, the personal red area, that's already been approved, right? Is it full up of everything as opposed to, but you want to put more land on?
And the reason is because it could be full very quickly. And so when so like I said, there's a lead time. And so in Virginia, it's either fortunate or unfortunate. The tax structure in Virginia is jurisdiction, it's winner take all. So there's no revenue sharing in Virginia, as in some states. So if a project ends up in County A receives all of the revenue for that project. County B receives nothing. And so that's kind of an unfortunate situation, but you do benefit because just the other night at the board meeting, 1 cent tax increase in Caroline produces $356,000. So one of these projects, the projected revenue from year one, just from the internal hardware, would produce almost $900,000. So there's the benefit to the citizens. The goal of any jurisdiction is to diversify its tax base so that the citizens don't have to bear the burden of the expenses and the tax increases, because jurisdictions only get money through taxes. And so if we diversify our industrial and commercial base, it lessens the burden for citizens in terms of paying taxes. Yes, sir.
So I understand the need for the county to have money, to pay taxes. But I'm concerned about the choice of location because it is, as indicated, outside of the Mount Prince Road area. It seems like it's taken from an area that is currently, very rural and green. It has forests. I don't know about that specific plot of land, but it is literally touching, my house, which has like overgrown forest and everything. It's encroaching on that, as opposed to the stuff that you already said is zoned industrial along 95 and 1. Like, if there's a data center, touching my backyard, that's a lot of noise and light pollution, more traffic and all that. There's plenty of space along 95, already closer to the fiber. And, I work for a tech company. Running fiber is not cheap, and they don't want to run it long distances because of the danger that cuts can cause. Like, along the 95-1 corridor, or if necessary, along 207, seem like they would be far less impactful for the people like us who live in Caroline, and, comparably easy for the companies. It may require needing to run another, another 115 kV line or whatever, but that seems easier than taking a whole bunch of land away from housing in. I don't have precisely defined methods, but the Mattapony Census District already has more families living in it than it does housing. That's not the case everywhere we go.
I'd agree. So the one reason that this area is attractive to those users, the data center users, is because of that power line that I talked about. Let's see. So, well, let me clarify. So this power line that you see here, the yellow line here, the yellow with the red dash, is a 230 kV line. The 230 lines can be tapped, so they can use those right away. The 500 kV line, which is across over on Jericho Road, cannot be tapped. So a project that was on a 500 kV line, they would have to extend power that could be used in those industries. The 230 lines are available today, and they can be used for power today. You don't have to extend the line. So they can tap that line, put in substations, and work off of those lines as they are today. So that is and the other reason this area is attractive is because the water and wastewater facility for the county is very close to here. So that also makes it attractive. Someone mentioned, I'm sorry?
MTD, they let it out, they run off the road, and turn the road. You all planning ahead, you get plan for the road.
Well, I can tell you, we are in the process right now of trying to address MCD, Dry Bridge Road. So what you have on this map here, this map represents a half-mile radius from, the darker blue area is a half-mile radius from the original PERT area from the red line, and then the peak area represents a half-mile radius from the blue line. Does that make sense? Well, because it extends from this line. Yes. Yeah.
So the red has been approved and the blue has.
Correct.
How many property owners own the blue part? One.
There's more than one. There probably So the red dots represent homes that are within a half-mile radius of the blue line. So within the blue line, inside of this proposed area, there are 6 homes in there. 6 inside the blue. There are more houses. There are a number of houses. If you look down here, these, like I said, the red lines, the red dots, these dots here are within the half-mile radius. These smaller light gray dots are homes that are just outside of. This is McBryant Road right here, and this is Dry Bridge where it's sits south. So here, over here.
There are houses there too. So someone has to report who owns all of that.
So there are a couple property owners. There's a larger property owner within the blue, and then there are a couple smaller property owners within the blue as well.
Who is the major property owner? Thomas Jefferson?
I think there's a trust or Mr. Jefferson's trust he's associated with does have a substantial hold in there. Yeah. Yeah. So I wanted to show you this map so you could see the impact of the change in the boundary. So before, with the red line where it is, none of these homes were within a half mile of the red line. When the line moves out, then that half mile radius does extend. Just for scale purposes, this is almost, so when the line was here, okay, this was the half mile radius here. These homes at that point were all outside the half mile radius. If the line is extended, now these homes are within that proposed per area, and then these homes here would be within the half mile radius, and then these are just on the cusp of the half mile radius here. This is McBride Drive here, McBride Road, and this is Drawbridge.
Explain in detail what the half mile radius buffer means.
It just means you're half mile from the blue line. Yeah.
But I'm like him, because I got right up to it too.
Mm-hmm.
And so you've got the noise, I've got grandchildren, like I told you, that play out in that woods,
Mm-hmm.
just like all the kids used to, and now they're not gonna be able to.
Yeah, my house is not, really not one of the restaurants, it's literally touching the line there, probably 1 mile, but, like, I don't, like I said, I work for a company with data centers. I don't want to raise my family adjacent to a data center.
Okay. Sir?
I have a question, 2 questions. The first question I have is you mentioned the data centers or data centers buying up additional parcel of land accumulation factor.
Mm-hmm.
My question to you is that is there something that the county will devise or it prohibits private landowners from buying or selling parcels of their land to the data center just for accumulation purposes? No. So again, the data centers can they go outside of the proposed boundaries and buy up additional properties if the landowner is willing to sell it.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that you're a rich man, but also it generally will affect the community that are outside of the buffer or the blue line.
So, like I said earlier, the establishment of the line and the future land use designation does not change the zoning. So they still have to go through the rezoning process.
That's going to be my second question. Mm-hmm. This is only, the blue line is only a proposed source.
That's correct.
The county has not taken it to the planning office. They have not voted on this.
No.
Okay.
That's why we're here tonight, to get community input before we get to that part.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm Joanne Dixon, I live in Hanover County, and they just approved the 1,200 acres on Hickory Hill. And they have said that it's going to take 800 people to open up the center. And then once the center's built, 20 years from now, it's going to be like nobody's going to be there. It's going to be unmanned. My question is Caroline County going to be able to house 800 people from Northern Virginia coming down here between businesses and design these centers? And their families and their schools.
So, right, yeah. That's a very good question. So right now, the largest development under construction right now is probably Pendleton. Pendleton was approved for 3,500 some odd units. And I say units and not lots because it's a combination of single family attached, single family detached, and multifamily. They aren't even halfway to developing. I mean, they're like at the 500 mark. So there's a significant amount of building to occur in Pendleton. The Belmont subdivision, Belmont North, which is just right up the street here, there was a proper amendment just approved at the end of last year that will allow an additional 526 units to go in there. Now, that case was approved back in 2008. The proffer amendment was just approved that would allow it to move forward because it had some substantial proffers that had gone stale, and so that got amended, and now they can build that. You still have available lots in Ladysmith Village. There are sections of Ladysmith Village that are yet to be constructed. So there are a number of units there that can be built. So
all the people who want to do this in years, so they can start working for
well, the one thing about data centers, the one thing, I'm sorry?
You're very close to Hanover County.
Oh, yeah. No, there's no doubt about it. Like I said, Caroline is blessed and cursed by its geography. That's something you cannot change, the fact of where we live and where we sit on the planet Earth. So, you know, all the things you talk about, we are feeling growth pressures from Hanover. Hanover is growing. Hanover is at more than 100,000 people now. Spotsylvania continues to grow. The Richmond area continues to grow. Caroline is attractive because a lot of people have dual income households. Some work to the north, some work to the south. So this is a happy median. The good thing, like I said, Caroline has done a very good job of sticking to the comp plan. Caroline has made it known that we're not necessarily interested in having a lot of new residential development because we have sufficient residential units on the books, and so there's really no need to improve additional units. And so from that perspective, you will see a natural growth. I mean, Caroline grew over the last 3 years, you know, so growth is going to occur.
Right. I just have a good question.
Sure.
What about the scenario that, you know, all the agencies have to come in and build, and then, you know, after a few years, they'll fall off, you know, you know, it's a long time. Right, but it is a long time. But it also could be a short time, depending on, you know, the growth of the data centers and the growth of technology and what people are learning. Maybe it'll take 10 years. So let's say they come and they, you know, it takes them 10 years to build it, right? And you're saying, oh, Clinton has space, and Belmont has space, and Bayshore Village has space. But what happens after they leave and they don't want to stay here? Because it still takes 15 minutes to go to the food line, and there's no Walmart unless you go to Ashland, right? So what happens to all the housing and all of that happened? I was just looking at, you know, just online looking at houses in Delaware. There are huge swaths of areas in Delaware where houses is for sale. So Caroline basically always want to be for sale.
It's an interesting way to phrase that question. I mean, we live in a capitalist society, and so that's what we do. We buy and we sell. So there's natural migration, you know, and that's why Carolina is growing now. The natural migration of people coming and going.
So I know something, thank you for meeting with me earlier today and doing more things. I appreciate it. One thing that you mentioned was that we don't want to be a bedroom community for Richmond and Fredericksburg. And although I understand not wanting more people living here, like one of the reasons that we moved here was because it's, you know, fewer people than downtown Richmond. If I have a choice of like a subdivision, you know, adjacent to my house and like a data center or a warehouse or something, I would prefer, you know, more families being able to move to the area to a bunch of industrial health. I can't speak for everyone. And I like having, you know, being able to walk like miles in the direction to my house and, you know, just being in the woods and fields and all that. But if there has to be something, and yes, I understand capitalist society and all that, you know, county needs money to operate. I would rather that come from, you know, people. This county can house the people who are working at, you know, the annoying industrial areas in Hanover and Fredericksburg and so on.
Okay. Sir?
I moved to Carolina, but house wasn't converted. Waco is a lopsided county. Citizen was half the county meetings. In between, we have the left side, we have the right side. But that being said, growth is another thing. my girl is, the teacher tried to lower, they tried to, yes, what's been the slam back? I'm not saying, why do you think I do that? I don't get any records to this.
So let's be clear. Let's be clear. I want to make it clear. This is not a project. So this is a conversation about potential expansion.
Plans in the works and already with NCD, don't lie.
I'm not lying to you. What I'm simply telling you that right now in this blue area, there aren't any plans to do anything. That is why we're having this discussion tonight, is because we know that we have a lot of interest in the red area, and that the land area that's in the red right now could be consumed very quickly. And so rather than come to the citizens in a helter-skelter mode, we're trying to look ahead and say, okay, this is a potential option to expand this PERT area to accommodate the future development. Yes, sir.
How many acres currently have zoning, you said manufacturing is a permitted use for the data center? What other like the zoning permitted is manufacturing?
Yes, manufacturing and the PERT.
What percentage of industrial, the manufacturing property is just in the county, it's not being developed?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And you know what? I have that number. I don't have it with me, but I will tell you it's a very small number. Yeah. There's 6,000 acres of. It's the same thing. Yeah.
No, he said it's in for the urban area.
This.
No, go back to the one that's in the comp plan, that's arbitrary growth area, you have to be there on, right, they show all the undeveloped land around Farming Church Station where they're doing for the data center, and 9,000, that's an integral part of what you're proposing and being left out.
Well, I don't think it's being left out. I mean, we can certainly have a conversation. So what Mr. Collins is speaking of is the Carmel Church Station project. That is it. This is the original. So let me explain. The only amendments to what you're talking about are this blue line here and this blue line here. Okay? This red line was added at the end of 2023. This black line you're speaking of is the map in the area from the 2030 comp plan.
The map I'm speaking of, that shows what each land mass is zoned for.
Okay, that's a different map. Okay, so that is the map. What he is speaking of. So within the comp plan, what Mr. Collins is speaking of, there's in the Carmel Church Station growth area, there's a map that identifies land banks that I may have. But it is within the Carmel Church growth plan. The land use map for Carmel Church identifies land banks. So each one of those little areas has a land bay identified, and it spells out what each land bay may be designated for. He's speaking about the 9,000 acres. He's speaking of the Carmel Church Station project, which is essentially this area here, from there to there. It was approved approved for 9,000 units. It's identified as the urban development area within Caroline County. The northern portion, there's a proffer amendment in right now that goes to the board next month for an amendment to those proffers to allow a data center the data centers are an approved use or by right use now, but it would essentially allow them not to have to go through the design standard and the charrette process that was included in the original rezoning. And so that project is essentially behind Flying J. It's about 97 areas of development for potentially 5 data centers.
The Denny's Farm, that was going around.
But that map is an area that shows people what is not developed yet. While we're sitting there talking about adding on. That would be part of the community meeting to justify why we need to change from the comprehensive plan that we continue to say we have followed so great for so long, and it was such an amazing comprehensive plan that won awards statewide. But we've been attacking it for the last 2 years to accommodate data center after data center after data center. And not even one has pushed something. Right? So I'm trying to make sure that my fellow citizens are seeing the entire picture and not the narrative of the county law.
Okay. So what I would say to you, in the Carmel Church growth area, there's 6,000 acres that are undeveloped. You essentially see what's developed in the Carmel Church data center. Most of the development in Carmel Church in this growth area has occurred between Route 1 at the intersection of Jericho Road and 207, back this way in this swath of land, right through here. That is where the majority of development has occurred here in Carmel Church. The rest of it is still vacant. So in terms of not telling the whole story, that is essentially the whole story. The development that has occurred within the Carmel Church growth area has been along this corridor. And it has all essentially been commercial industrial development.
But question, should properly so that the rest of 207, they don't go through one of these residential areas. That was developed specifically in industrial area, red light, traffic control, the whole thing. That's pretty careful.
Well, if you look at this line, the original plan, the line extends here. You can see it extends out to here. So if you take Luther Glen Road, there's planned industrial development along Luther Glen Road right now. So you will still, that's where the Trader Joe's warehouse is. That's where the Trader Joe's warehouse is. Well, most of, yes. But now in terms of data center development, there's very limited traffic once the construction is done.
And when you say construction, what does that mean? Tell me why does it.
Well, the construction to build the data centers.
The actual erection of the building.
Yes.
But you still have people that work inside.
Well, Caroline County does not have sufficient citizens itself to support. We don't have the citizens now to support.
That's what I know. That's what I'm saying. You have to go to work.
But listen, a lot of the jobs that are filled now, like the Trader Joe's warehouse, there are a fair number of those employees do not live in Caroline County. But you don't want, a minute ago you said you don't want the residents. Well, we don't have, at this very moment, we don't have the housing stock to support the average worker that is working in the Trader Joe's warehouse. Because there's limited supply of low-cost housing in Carolina.
Well, I understand that those dialysis, but I'm saying is, we as a county have to be able to sustain the workers that are going to be there every day. We have to. And you just told us that over here on Route 1, there's all Pendleton and all of that hasn't built themselves out. So my question talking about people that need to go to work in warehouses, data centers, and whatever it is. Something is missing here, because we still have to have schools, and we still have to improve our roads, and we still have to have water, and we still have to have electricity. We have to have all of that, and God knows we would love to have freaking internet in Carolina.
And I think that you said that, in talking about like that area specifically around the 207 or it's 95, that there was a lot of undeveloped area left in the Carmel Church growth area. If not that, why are we looking at an expansion that is outside of the Carmel Church growth area then?
But even if we're looking at an expansion, we haven't accounted for the infrastructure for the people who will be coming. That's the root of it all, the infrastructure.
Like the Church Livingston, they didn't even have their clubhouse with a pool yet. All they had was a golf course in the middle of some houses. And then the whole back half is just dirt. And there's nothing there. So, and I agree with what you're saying. We're gonna build these data centers, we're potentially gonna build these data centers. But buildings haven't even showed up yet. And then you wanna build 500 something houses over here in the back of Belmont, but you can't even fill up anything yet.
Well, Pendleton is, I can tell you, Pendleton is, they are selling houses in Pendleton as about as fast as they can get them built.
They will build them, if we build them, people will come. But my question goes back to what I asked at the beginning, the tax rate is the people, because we have to make these roads better. Cameras got run over the other day for a logging truck. So, we have to make the roads better. I mean, I love Caroline County's way of repaving. They throw down tar and sand and think they can pave the road. I mean, I called one day and asked about getting a hole filled, and they told me that they were planning on repaving the road in 2024. I told them, don't worry about it, we won't have a road yet. So, I mean, that's what we're missing.
That's because that's VDOT, that's not Caroline.
Well, the infrastructure.
No, it is.
That is what we're missing in
It is.
the schools suck. And we don't have good roads, we don't have the electricity, we don't have any of this. And
Well,
so when you're talking about expanding, I would like to see the plan that shows me all of those things. Because without that, this is useless.
well, I don't disagree with the words you said, and it takes money to do all of the things you talked about. And so that is one reason why the county is trying to diversify and attract businesses so that we do have the money and can collect the money to do the things that you're talking about. So it's kind of a chicken and an egg scenario. Caroline has been a very rural county for a long time and is now just on the cusp of starting to grow and starting to feel the effects of that growth. And so roads that were sufficient 10, 15 years ago are not sufficient. The pace of growth is occurring very quickly, and so it takes a while to catch up. And we're trying now to get ahead of the curve, and especially in the road category. We're doing everything we can right now to address the road needs in the county. But infusion of dollars is what it takes to accomplish all the things that you identified there. Just from an employment perspective, one thing about data centers are not large employers. I mean, they are not. You might have 30 people per shift in a data center. And so they're...
That's 30 houses.
It is. I don't disagree with that. But I just wanted to make the point that, it's not a warehouse where it's not Trader Joe's where they have 1,000 people working. They have trucks beating up our roads, night and day. I can imagine if you come out here at 2 or 3 in the morning and watch the number of trucks leaving Trader Joe's, you'd be amazed. So I'm just making a point. There's employees.
Yeah, data centers are worse than, industrial factories, like that center obviously. The question is why is it?
Well, like I said, the reason this area is attractive is because you have the infrastructure to support data centers. The power line and the water. Yes, sir.
Bob Wood, question I have with data centers is essentially the water. Where we all know that
it's not going to, where is it one? Wherever we're putting the data, obviously, no one will not be on their property, they're gonna be neighbors. So where is the water?
So right now, there's a plan that for a fair number of data centers, the county can supply water to through the drilling of wells. And so now, it is. But
How long is the tax in revenue for the state to pay off drilling wells?
well, that's a good question. That's the question I can't answer for you.
There's only so much water in the ground.
There is.
On it, and now you're
Yes.
a massive take on it.
Yes.
It's a big deal.
The one thing I would say about the water issue that is somewhat hopeful is that the technology in data center cooling is improving. So they're requiring a little less water. There's a lot more reuse water going on. And so, hopefully as technology improves, the need for water will decrease. And who knows, as fast as technology changes now, in 10 years, we might not even be talking about data centers. We could potentially be talking about something else. Who knows? But I will say, the water is a concern. The good thing is we have the DEQ pays really close attention to water withdrawal in this county because, we do have a groundwater management area in the county. And so the Department of Environmental Quality is very much in tune with what goes on in Caroline County. That is the one part of DEQ that I don't have any problem getting in contact with anybody. So I can tell you they're certainly in tune to that issue here. So, but without question, it is something that we have to address. Now, long term, the county's thought process is to get a water withdrawal permit to draw water from the Rappahannock. So, yes, ma'am.
Robert Road has a big power line there. I've heard you mention it several times. How important is that to this?
It's very important. It is the main reason that this area is attractive to data centers. Because like I said at the beginning, that's a 230 line. That line can be tapped today. It is. It is, but like I said, it's a 230 line, and it can be tapped today to supply power for these uses. So it is the reason, primarily, that data centers are looking to be in this area. Yes. Where it runs.
It runs across a number of roads. So, this is Bruce's Lane Road right here. 95 is down here, kind of off the map there. The Hanover County line is essentially right here.
Yes, ma'am.
Have you been in communication with Frank, the building that you built?
I have not been in contact with Track.
Caroline County been in communication with Frank?
I don't know if anybody has. I have not been in contact with them.
Don't know.
Right. Any other questions?
One correction, the statement said regarding the comprehensive. First, state law, or I'm sorry, in Code of Virginia, it requires the comprehensive plan be reviewed every 5 years, not updated like you had said. There is no need to update a comprehensive plan every 5 years. It needs to be reviewed and looked at in accordance with what it was intended to set out as when it was written.
Mm-hmm.
It's also yearly good to look at it for whatever revisions to code data change that need to be applied on it. And you also incorrectly stated that everyone pays the same for the data center. That's false. Rapid County, when they have 115 data centers, their per $100 assessment is $4.15. And Caroline County is giving it away at $1.25.
So, Mr. Collins, let me stop you right there. What I said was it was a regional agreement that agreed upon that $1.27 tax rate. That's what I said. I said there was a regional agreement. No, I do not.
Regardless, Caroline County is out there on the side of 95 paying $1.25 per hundred.
As is,
The counties can charge more and get more for their citizens.
as is every other jurisdiction in this region.
What does that mean by Clinton? Tell me that.
Yeah, how big is the area?
What does that mean?
Spotsylvania, King George, Spotsylvania, King George, Caroline.
Is that an include Hanover?
No,
Or in the district?
yeah. Essentially, the jurisdiction's in PD 6.
Do you know what the cost comparison is between running another, power line at that voltage versus the fiber, the bundles of fiber that need to be run to 95? Because it seems like running another power line may be an easier plan and keep everything in the power.
Well, so their impact. So one of the things we have to look at, and REC and Dominion come to us about this, is we don't want power lines just zipping across the county, because that has an impact as well. I mean, a power line easement is probably about a minimum of 80 feet, depending on the type of structure that they put up.
Trust me, I had to pay to do that.
Well, listen, putting a 230 voltage line underground is really expensive. And so they prefer to be above ground. So if you start talking about running power lines across the county, you start to impact, other areas. So one of the concerns that we have or that we expressed to Dominion and REC about the data center going at the Flying J, is that this is the power line right here that would feed the project up here. So what we don't want to have happen is we don't want to have a power line that essentially crosses this entire area to get over here, because now it impacts all of this developable land in that path. So we wouldn't necessarily want to do that and say, well, we'll just run another power line. There's a potential option to have it come here or someone from down here and run in a more direct route that way. So
One that would be power line ran through the western part.
Yeah, are you trying,
Which is
the one in Jericho is out of question because of that?
well,
That's the one that's only 8 miles from my house.
so the project on Jericho Road has not gone to the board yet. The board sent back the comp plan amendment to the planning commission. The planning commission recommended again to deny the amendment to the comp plan. And so at this point,
you know what will go to the next meeting?
no. So let me explain what happened at Tuesday night's meeting. So, well, to finish your question, to finish the first part of this, the application for the project on Jericho Road has to go, the rezoning application has to go to the board, as well as the comp plan amendment. The applicant asked that those two items go together, because there's when you talk about the comp plan amendment, you're essentially talking about that rezoning case. And so the county did not do that. The applicant made a request.
Instead of the last meeting, the county reached out to me.
No, Mr. Collins, you are not speaking about the same meeting, because the applicant did. You're right, but we're talking apples and oranges now. So what we're talking about is the fact that the other night, on Tuesday night, the applicant asked that comp plan amendment not be scheduled for May 14th, because they had asked for deferral. In Virginia, the applicants control their application. They asked for a deferral. They did not have a date definite. So what should happen at this point, Mr. Collins, may I finish my statement, please? I'm trying to tell you what happened at the meeting. So at the meeting on Tuesday night, the applicant asked that the comp plan amendment not be scheduled for May 14th, because they intend to ask that it be scheduled. They're going to ask for their rezoning case to be scheduled for a meeting, and they want to have the comp plan scheduled on the same meeting, so that they run concurrently.
So they didn't dictate what the
That was a board decision. That's a board decision. What do you mean, who did tell?
This developer told me, because I saw them, it was my board member and Scott conversation before the meeting started, and you're saying that maybe you heard it as well?
No, I didn't say I heard anything. Don't put words in my mouth. But I'm telling you, it was a board decision. So that's all I can tell you. The applicant, yes, the applicant made a request. I don't know who. I don't know. If the applicant doesn't come to me, then I should know that. Are there any other questions related to this? Yes, sir.
Yeah, has the county confirmed with our company that the line is sufficient for future?
Yes.
Because they're already transition lines, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So Dominion right now is in the process of doing upgrades to this line and other infrastructure. So it's unfortunate. A lot of times Dominion knows about these projects well in advance of jurisdictions, because the way this process is set up, these companies have to expend a lot of money up front for Dominion and REC to do studies. So in the REC process, they essentially, the third step of that process, they have to pay more than $80,000 for REC to start the study process. So that's up front. That's just to determine if REC can provide the power. So Dominion has, based on the inquiries that they are getting, they are upgrading and have plans to upgrade these power lines. Probably at the end of this summer, August or so, Dominion is probably going to announce a public hearing to talk about the upgrades that they're going to do to the power lines and the network.
That's the power line to help.
Mm-hmm.
That's why. We're going to have to upgrade it for our data center.
Yeah.
So, Marty, from the so the blue section, what do you think of the timeline for reality of data centers? Because you have to go through the government to go through all of that. And it doesn't happen overnight.
Correct.
And yes, that's something you want, all of that has to happen. That's not a tomorrow thing, that's not even a year from now thing, that's probably more of a 2 year thing. If they started today, and I've built enough ground ups to know that it takes probably 3 years, 2 to 3 years from the time you really start serious about the property. So what are you thinking based on what your knowledge is today, what you know, what is the timeline for the blue area to actually have something placed on it?
Well, right now there is no timeline because the blue area doesn't exist. Okay, so, but you're right. Right now, in order for a company, there's a 3-year lead time on equipment to build a substation. So, you're exactly right. I mean, it's from the date of approval in a regular project. Let's say a gas station, a Taco Bell, it's a year at least to 2 years from date of approval to that facility is probably even close to being open. And that's if they're on an aggressive schedule.
It's a year to get a switch. It's a year to get an air.
Yeah, they're 3 years out on like substation equipment right now. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
What has to happen to keep the blue line around the system?
Well, yeah. I mean, what you need to do is, one, is participate in this process. 2, make your feelings known. And, that decision isn't ultimately up to me. It's ultimately a board decision. And so, talk to your planning commission members, talk to your board members, and let them know how you feel. Send us letters and comments about how you feel. All that becomes part of the record. That's the reason we're here tonight, is to get your thoughts and your input on this potential process. Yes, sir.
All right, so who answers for that information? And what is the person's name?
So,
My understanding is it was only one person.
well, so in conversation with the Economic Development Director and myself, and what we know about what's happening in the red area right now, we started to look at would it be suitable to expand that area. And that process we got approached by a property owner to say, hey, I have available property. If you're interested in expanding the area, then it's there. So a willing property owner, coupled with what we know is happening, kind of leads to the potential expansion.
All right, so three people, right? You say yourself, one landowner, and another, right? Three people. Is that right?
Not one landowner, yeah.
Yeah, all right. So the decision of three people is going to impact how many?
No, wait, stop right there. There is no decision. So that's why we're here. That's why we're here, is to discuss the possible expansion. So there is no decision. So that is what this process is about, is having community input. This is your community. This is not my community. This is your community. That's why we're here. That's why you have an opportunity to express yourself. Man, I don't live in Hanover, in Carolina, no. Yes, ma'am.
The black area over here is where you want to extend Palmer Church families, right?
This black area is the existing growth boundary. It exists today. Yes, ma'am. The blue is the potential expansion. That's, yeah. Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Like, potential, right? And that a lot of people are happy about it. Can that area be made smaller? Does it have to be
That's
that
possible.
small?
It's possible. Well, so the only thing I would say about that, the line is drawn along parcel boundaries, okay? And the reason it's done that way is because we didn't want to bisect. That's the reason for the expansion on this side, is because this line bisects parcels over here. And so you have a growth, potential area that bisects parcels. So if someone came here, let's take this parcel. If someone wanted to do a project on this parcel, you have half the parcel in the growth area and half the parcel out of the growth area. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to do that. So it makes sense to run it along the natural property line.
Most of my children are in, right? Happen. And then I live beyond about what's in front of me, what's to the right of me, what's behind me. I don't own those schools, but someone else does, right? They see this world, they're like, oh, I want to raise my profit. Let me sell it for some more data centers. Then I'm surrounded by data centers. That's what you give an inch, they're going to take.
So that is the person's nightmare who lives in metropolitan suburban America. I'm gonna tell you, because you don't control the land next to you. We live in a property rights nation, and so you can see subdivision after subdivision in more metropolitan and suburban areas. Today they're woods, and you go play out in those woods and do whatever you want. You enjoy that scenery, and tomorrow that property owner decides to sell their property, and now it's a subdivision.
I guess if I may,
Sure.
Undeniably, at some point, the comment was made that growth is going to occur. At present, there are still areas within, but I hate to say, I work on it and I assess data centers. They're chasing the water and they're chasing the power. Where I have an issue, I retired from the Marine Corps. My family and I wanted to move to a rural county where I wasn't surrounded by people, a little peace and quiet. And I know that people get heated, and I'm not heated yet. So I've been around, I guess. So they're chasing the power line, they're chasing water. But it's the aspect of the willing participant, and I use this word cautiously, but I feel as a new resident of Caroline County that it is dishonest of Caroline County's executive, the governance of Caroline County, that taking that willing participant, trust me, I've seen willing participants, at a lot of different meetings, reading a lawyer's presentation that they provided them to be able to speak as to how beneficial these different things were. Because I've been around a lot of those conversations working for the government. That's where I feel like you're losing the community is that individual. I love capitalism. I fought for it for 21 years. I wish it was more associated with our country and not other people's countries. But the bottom line is, you're taking that willing participant that I don't deny. I hope, maybe someday if I ever need to sell my property, I can sell my property.
but I'm selling it for the purposes and uses that it is designated for. This is something I feel like the county is taking advantage of. Chasing a power line, you have the water available theoretically, but that willing landowner is gonna get a whole chunk of change more selling it to industrial or, dare I say, and it's almost assuredly a data center. The county is taking advantage of that, and that's where you're losing the faith of the people who live here. Because I don't deny that individual the right to sell his property for someone else to come and use that property for the uses, or, parse it up for residential, for other people to use it to live on. But in this case, it seems a little bit dishonest to me, and again, I'm new to the county, that they were expanding for one or two individuals' extreme financial gain. And it is the county taking advantage of that, where everything I've heard described, there are other areas within this comp plan that have not yet been developed. I mean, within the red, I'm not going to disagree. I was an engineer within the Marine Corps. That is prime real estate for a data center. You have the power, you have the water. But to expand it because a willing landowner comes in and says, I want to sell, I think that's what we're all kind of smirking about. That is now going to make out like a bandit. And the county's like, cool, we'll incorporate you into the perks so that you can sell to this particular industry. It's a little dishonest. And that's my comment.
Okay. The only thing I would say to that is, if that occurs, that person is truly going to benefit, no doubt. But if the development occurs, then ultimately the county benefits as well, because the county then reaps the tax revenues that allows us to provide service.
And I don't disagree with that. That's why within the 2023, and I wasn't as connected to the county at that point, that red area, prime real estate.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about expanding the blue area because a landowner started smelling the green and realized he was pretty close to that area.
Yeah.
I don't like not calling spades spades.
Sure. Well, and I would say, and it's kind of the perfect storm, so to speak. Because of the prime real estate and the interest that we're seeing, the red area can be consumed very quickly. Amazon up at Mattamy purchased 1,200 acres. Okay, the original part area is only 1,400 acres. Okay, so if someone came in and purchased 1,200, we're down to 400. Now we don't have any more inventory.
And I agree with you.
And so that's
comment rightfully placed. But is anybody speaking for that red area yet? Has anyone even proposed a plan for development of that area? Because right now we're exploring a hypothetical when we don't yet have a concrete project that has been spoken for within that red area.
Well,
I feel like we're speaking, we're not to help or shelter yet because we haven't even gotten to, past that proposal that was introduced and approved in 2023.
Yeah. The way I like to explain this is in terms of car sales. There are a lot of car sales. There are a lot of people kicking the tires. Okay? So on Saturday morning, car salesmen are ready to go because they know it's the busiest traffic time. That's essentially what we have going on right now in the red area. There's a lot of people showing a lot of interest in that red area.
And the building we're being sold to by you sources. You
I have a question, because when I took the map home you gave,
Mm-hmm.
and I showed it to my husband, he said, our property, this is Jefferson using the driveway, sometimes to get to the property. And he said to me, well, that's interesting, these two parcels over here, right around the corner in the new area, he said, he told me he just bought. Oh. Really? How did he know to go buy it? That's my question. It
and land to this property, that's always another part of that. Our farm has been mined and seen for 5 generations. Now, this is coming about to be a threat to our way of life, it's agricultural, it's farm every year. And I just don't see the need for us to expand this just because it's one property owner is offering it up because he wants the money and he's rich anyway. He doesn't even live in this county. He doesn't come to this county for anything other than to visit his property occasionally, and I don't even know why he does that. Because he has no care whatsoever for this county. He came to us and wanted us to go in with him. So we already been made an offer for our property, and we told him absolutely not interested in it alone. And we told him the same. But I think we need to look at more than just this one property owner saying, I got this land, I can sell it, it can be developed for a data center. And you don't think about who is affected around. Our way of life and our land that we have to hand down to our children and grandchildren, and hopefully for many more generations, is being put at risk because of this one person. Yep.
Yes, sir.
Do you happen to know what the expected tax revenue from just the red area is going to be, and how much more that county needs?
I don't know. Yeah, I can't answer that. Anyone else?
What about the number of data centers that you anticipate in the red area? Is there projected? No. So, just to give you an example, the Amazon project got approved. I think ultimately built out there was maybe 12 buildings, I want to say, within that project. So if a company came, let's say if Amazon came along and purchased property within the red area, then you could potentially project maybe something like 12 buildings, 12 data centers. The project behind Flying J is going to be 5 data centers on essentially 97 acres. So.
Flying J, Dennis, or Flying J?
The Flying J on the western side of 95. I'm here every day.
So,
yeah, well, I don't know if Denny's or the other restaurant.
My point is just, the reason I'm asking this question is just to kind of continue with the latest stuff that once it starts, it's just going to continue and continue. So, right, and so if you wind up with that area just maxed out in a very short period of time, like you're saying could be true, I guess my question is, you're going to have a lot of revenue. Why do you need the blue area? And then once that area, the blue area is developed, you're going to need to go south. And then you're going to need, because there will be more and more demand. You have to always meet the demand here.
May I answer this question, please? May I answer this question? Yeah. So I think the way you address that is through this process that we're having right now. So, in 2006, the comp plan was developed. We're coming up on the horizon year of the comp plan. And so we're going to start that process again. And so as we go through that process, we have to decide what it is we're going to be in the next 30 years. That's exactly what they did in 2006. And that's exactly why we have what we have now. What you see occurring now was thought about way back in 2006. And so things don't happen overnight. I mean, it takes a long time for the dominoes to fall in place for development to occur. So, I'm sorry? It does not. Well, it touches Dry Bridge. Well, we don't typically draw.
You're gonna get to it. You're gonna have to build the road, is my point.
Well, they may have to build a road. They may very well have to do that.
They'll charge the, data centers to build the road. Yeah.
Right. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I know, someone said, and I can't remember who, it's basically inevitable. It's going to be growth, it's inevitable, right? But the area that I came from, and we have to be very wise with what we choose. We have to be very wise with what we choose. So, I grew up in Gainesville, Virginia, okay? When I was young, Disney wanted to buy Gainesville. We had little buttons, yay Disney, bring Disney here. The board said, no, we're not bringing Disney. Now they have a swath of restaurants, movie theaters, and a whole bunch of houses, just totally disgusting traffic. But which would have been better? All of that commerce in little teeny bits, right? With a restaurant, a movie theater, this, that, house. Or would it have been better to have Disney, right? So we have to be mindful of whatever choices one is made. And because now people are like, hey, we should have brought Disney here. Because it would have just been, one thing. It might have been traffic coming in and out and all of that. But it wouldn't be the everyday living and being stuck in traffic and taking 30 minutes to go 5 miles. To have that happen here would be just awful.
Well, we're working hard not to have that happen here. So.
I don't know.
Got a question. So if the city is gonna be pumping the water, right? At some point, the people that live close to where these wells are gonna be drilled, if they have a shallow well, they're gonna have to drill deeper. So I don't know the cost, but I would assume somewhere between 50 and 7,500. So who's gonna help these people, these citizens, to drill another well? Because they're gonna be out of water.
No, that's a very legitimate concern. And so, if a plan was to come through and a rezoning case was to happen, then that's something that we would have to address as a part of that process. Because, these things don't happen in a vacuum. And like you say, you are adjoining neighbors and you may have, and that's a real possibility. And so we do have to, you're exactly right. And so to understand the process, this is just like I said at the beginning, this would only create a land use designation. If someone was going to come along and wanted to do a project, they'd have to go through the rezoning process, and we'd be right back here having this type of conversation, but we'd be having a little bit more detailed conversation about how we could mitigate any impact if it got developed.
So I got another question.
Mm-hmm.
If these data centers, people really get to see for what they are, right? They make noise, they pollute, they got all these diesel generators, backup generators, some of us that for big. They've got these generators, with no pre-density mechanical space, so I know what they do. So, running whatever the amount of time the power goes out, plus if they do this daily or weekly checks, they kind of have it there. So people gonna see them for what they are. Now, by that time, you already are going to have this additional area. So the problem is going to be magnified. It's not going to be limited to just the red area. So why not wait instead of landing a red project with more acres, another 1,500 acres that are going to be affecting a lot more citizens. We don't owe the data centers anything. And they come here because they are being paid from Northern Virginia. They're not coming here. I mean, everything is there for them to do their operation. But on the same token, they're not welcome in Northern Virginia. Like the former, if I'm not mistaken, it's not approved no more. I'm wrong.
No, it's William County just put the whole bunch.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. I mean, they want to be here, and so that's why, as a part of the rezoning process, if we get to that point, that's where, as a community, then we ask for things to help mitigate their impact. That's why we developed an ordinance as a part of that. And so.
But you already landed in red carpet to make with additional.
No, the only thing we're saying at this point is if this was to happen, what we said with the red area, we said this is an area we think is appropriate for this type of development. So that's what the land use designation does. The rezoning process is where we can ask for, and above and beyond the ordinance. I mean, we developed an ordinance that has requirements for muffling generators to help mitigate the impact. You know, to look at environmental impacts. And so, but there are other things you can,
Maybe you wouldn't be able to rezone to a PERC or put a data center on that land as it's currently sitting right now, unless you put this special overlay that landowner requests.
yes,
The only way you can sell this land is top dollar.
yes, no, I don't disagree with that at all.
But the county is entertaining, and it's just going to steamroll and continue. You're seeing it now here, you're seeing it here. We've already given these areas. Amazon hasn't even signed a water agreement. There's no guarantee a shovel will ever go in the ground in my lifetime, which isn't being communicated to the citizens of Caroline County. We all had a nice press conference in Fredericksburg with the governor smiling that we're getting all the money, and there's not even water to that site. So again, we have 1,200 acres to the north. We have 1,600 acres to the south. You're asking for an additional 1,400 to come to 3,000. And we haven't even started to touch the Lovestone piece, which is coming up, I assume, as the next part of this meeting, to where more data centers are possibly going to be put in there. Because this meeting is supposed to talk about both of them.
No.
Oh, they didn't include the Lovestone in this one? Because there's another 1,000-acre comprehensive plan change in the west of the county on Route 1 Jericho for an additional 1,100 acres. And you're not talking about that at this meeting.
No, because this meeting was specifically designed to talk about this area. It does.
It's not a piecemeal project. This is an acreage farm comprehensive plan that is laid out across the entire county.
I understand that.
Picking and choosing either favorites, or this guy's been in the county for 30 years, so let's give him a chance, or this one landowner comes in and, yeah, we would send the blue line, you know any buddies? Why don't you go to the farm down there that's been here for 5 generations, see if you can suck them out of their land? We've seen it 1,000 times. It's solar, it's data, it's all of these new industries, and without proper control at the county level, we have nothing. There's no state control, so we are the last stop. And in my opinion, from what I'm seeing, our county is disregarding any sort of guardrails on this industry to respect the citizens and what they want. Because these community meetings aren't full of the people that are going home and want them. Well, maybe there's one or two here tonight, but they probably benefit to maybe make a few dollars to put a solar farm in their neck of the woods, a data center on their land. I get it. We're not going to be able to stop all the growth. People can do what they want with their land. But this is showing a clear disregard for the citizens of the county by picking and choosing where you're going to just extend these places ad nauseam.
Well, I would say this: the guardrail is you all sitting here right here tonight. That's why you're here. So.
Not our elected officials don't listen to us.
Well, you know how to. There's a process for that as well.
Explain to them what land use means. Our family has a lot of land in Caroline County, and we're in land use. It's $10 an acre for taxes. They want to extend that so they can get not agriculture, what is it, resident? Technology land use. That means they're paying $10 an acre for tax. Explain to them what land use is. Because I know. Because we have a lot of land in Caroline County.
Sure. So essentially, if you have property, there's a minimum acreage requirement, where if you meet that minimum requirement, you can apply for a land use taxation designation, which essentially reduces your taxes that you pay on your acres. So you don't pay with a property and land use, you don't pay the same taxes that someone who has a 15,000 or 2 acre lot. So essentially the tax rate is reduced for those large landholdings. That's essentially what the land use program is. I'd have to look. I can't tell you exactly. It might be. Yeah.
I think it's 8 acres for farm and.
It's got to be an agriculture, but agriculture is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
for 10,000 acres, and that's why they're extending that water, so they can just pay out.
Well, he can pay that now. I mean, they can go into land use now. So, yeah. It's forestry, yeah.
All right, so from what you're getting from this meeting, what is your answer back to the table? That we as a community want it, or that we don't? So what would be your opinion when you get back to the drawing board?
Well,
If we say that we want it.
yeah. Well, from what I've seen tonight, the majority of the people here have essentially expressed that they are not in favor of an expansion of the PERT area.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's not. Yes, sir.
My concern is that, there's knowledge of what's required, but, flagging fire truck is $1 million. You have to have firefighters that not volunteer on the work, these kind of trucks also. You got paid firefighters. And building inspections have inspectors probably full time, job like that. The engineers have to review what is all in additional cost? The road infrastructure, the water infrastructure. And until we know all that, nothing we can do with it.
So just to address your concern about resources on or taxing county resources to build a project like this. So in the Amazon project, the process was set up so that they would pay for third party or additional resources that would be needed for inspections, both building and environmental. One of the things we looked at there was the requirement that they go out and camera all of the roads leading to the project prior to starting up construction to determine what the condition of the road is, so that if they damage those roads and they have to fix them, that's a part of the process. So those are the types of things that, when I talked about the more detailed discussion in the rezoning process, those are the types of things that you discuss with the applicant and get them to commit to, so that those responsibilities and that cost is not left to the county.
But you can existing roads built as Lumington, it's not wide.
Yeah.
You bring tractor trailer. When MCD takes it from Michael out, they have to get the sheriff's office pay over, then lots of those steps, so they can go the wrong way.
I have sat in that stops traffic a number of times.
You bring something, the infrastructure, not set up to do it.
Well, and I will say this. The good thing about MC Dean is we are in the process right now of trying to secure funds to improve Dry Bridge Road to correct that. That is probably one of the highest priorities in our transportation process right now, is to deal with the Dry Bridge. I don't disagree with you there. That horse is, for MC Dean, that horse has been out of the barn a long time.
How far down Dry Bridge Road? The expansion.
The road.
The road improvement.
Probably back to, is it? No, that's hopefully back that far. Hopefully we can get funds to take it that far.
I mean, basically, the borderline in the case,
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, that's an issue. I mean, the county right now is in the process of having fiber put in all throughout the county. So there's an ongoing project right now to provide fiber optics throughout the county.
I had when Cindy was coming down to my house, they said we're not, unless you want to pay $76,000. So I think I wrote to you, and you might have wrote back, somebody wrote me back and said, oh, we're not coming down there, but there's nothing coming over there right now.
That's the reality.
So they want to put in data centers, right?
But if we had extra money, then maybe the county could potentially run that fiber to provide that service.
I have a question though. Is there a way to have a meeting with numbers? Because that's what we're missing. We know we need roads, we know we're gonna need water, we know there are certain things that we're going to need if we agree to say yes. Because right now we don't have all the stuff. So it would be great to say, we can fit, let's say, 10 data centers in this blue area. I'm just using a number. Okay, at 30 people per shift, that's 3 shifts, okay, that's 100 people. Okay. We know we gotta have housing for 100 people. We know we have to have schools. We know we have to do the roads. We know we have to do other things. So my question is, if they're gonna pay $1.50 or whatever the number was, how does that all lay out? And that's what we're missing. That's what I'm missing is the facts. We don't have the facts at this point. I mean, how much does it cost us to go to school now? I was thinking about saw the other day, $30 million. Okay, so we know we're going to have the school. We know that we got to do the roads. I mean, we all know what Dry Ridge looks like now. And you're trying to get funding, well, that's a joke. Okay, we all know how we, like I said, how we pay roads in Carolina, we're far down as we stand on it. And then, so there are things that we have to do that cost money, and what does that look like compared to the revenue that's going to be? I think that's
Sure. So, like I said earlier, there are some projections that in the first year of, let's say, the project up here on behind Flying J, but Denny's over. I missed that. So, there's a projection that would produce about $900,000. So, like I said at the beginning, 1 cent on our tax rate produces about $356,000. So, there's a little indication of, in terms of tax revenue, how much you would gain. I mean, the cost to build a road, I don't know what.
So that's what we need to know.
Yeah, well, I can tell you this. I don't know what it costs to build a road right now because of inflation.
Yeah.
I mean, that price has changed so much in it changes every day, what it costs to build a lane mile of road. So that's a hard one. I mean, we can get close to those numbers for sure. Yeah.
I think that's what I need.
Okay.
To have a little more comfort area to it. Because like I said, I mean, it's not a road basically to get to that. So that's got to be upgraded. The electric, I'm really worried about the water because I live on the wells, one of the wells there. We all live on wells. You start digging deep wells, and I'm not going to have a drop of water, not a drop. Okay? And then what do I do? Because I can't afford to dig another well.
The county can,
Yeah.
I'm having a conversation about that to address the problem.
Yeah.
You're done. I'm a farmer, I'm done.
Yeah.
That's the reason I have that irrigation. My business is long. I can't put it on and get that.
Right.
And have a conversation or put it.
We need numbers. I think we need some numbers to be able to give you an intelligence.
And I mean, also, it's not even just the direct stuff about that land, like, my property is adjacent to that. And I know one person commented earlier, and it's personally one of the point that if there's a bunch of money coming in from, data center and, real estate and all that could then result in lower taxes. It doesn't help all that much if, property taxes for homeowners go down by a third, if the assessment doubles or triples because it's adjacent to, data centers and it's in the next adjustment to this line that we're discussing in a year or two.
A potential data center. A data center?
Okay.
See, my land, butts right up to it. And that's I showed my brother-in-law the other day and walk out the front door of my house.
wanted a clarification about something with respect to the water. Everybody's talking about the effects of water to the neighbors, but really the amount of water that these facilities will be using, you're talking about the kind of really deep wells that the county currently owns to provide water to the citizens that get county water, correct? So you're not talking about, oh, I'm next to that property. You're talking about the whole reservoir, the whole water level, the entire county and probably beyond.
So like I said earlier, one of the things that, the DEQ is really in tune to the water issue here in Caroline, because the two aquifers here they replenish they're not replenishing at a fast enough rate. No, exactly, now. And so DEQ is very in tune to that and keeps a close eye. So I'll give you an example. We had a case at the board on Tuesday night. They were proposing ultimately a residential development would be proposed. They would have to drill a well to support that project. Well, one of the things that, because in the groundwater management area, one of the things that they would have to do is determine that there's sufficient water to support that project. And so let's say they got approval for, let's say 80 lots. The ultimate request is for 135. So let's say they got approval for 135, but when they did the testing to determine how much water was available, DEQ could come back and say, well, there's not sufficient water here for 135. You can only get 80. And then that's what they'd be allowed to get, is the 80, not the 135. So
that could change over time.
Well, only if by probably in our lifetime, if somehow those aquifers start to replenish at a much faster rate.
Well, what about the other, going in the other direction?
It's in the same.
Being replenished enough in 10 years because of.
Well, that's why we're monitoring it now, so to prevent the problem.
But you're right, the data center is there, and the projections were not correct.
Well, if someone makes it, we have to address that. But we would hope that the engineers could figure out we hope they don't make an error. Now, they're human, so people make errors, but the studies would be done to hopefully mitigate any impacts, is the point I'm trying to make. We just wouldn't be a willy-nilly, go dig 12 wells and have that. No, it wouldn't be the case. So if there aren't any more questions, I want to thank you all for coming and providing your input. This is an important part of the process. So
thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
This is the first ever project.
Just coming online to attract